A supermarket, your average supermarket, in the United States. Look around. What do you see? Aisle after aisle of food. Food that caters to every taste, to every American desire under the sun, to every fad, to every craze. Low fat, low cal, low sugar, low carb. High fiber, high in omega-3s, high protein. It's perfect. Anything you could possibly want. But wait. Where's the real food? Everything is doctored. Even seemingly basic products are doctored. Your eggs have extra omega-3s. Okay. Your milk has extra omega-3s. Your bread, your yogurt, your cheese, ditto. Okay, so you're thinking, okay, we need omega-3s, right? Not necessarily. Last fall, 2 prestigious studies on omega-3s were published at more or less the same time. And they presented us with strikingly different conclusions. According to the first study, a study by the Institute of Medicine, it was argued that it is uncertain how much these omega-3s contribute to improving health. And in fact, if you get these omega-3s from mercury-contaminated fish, then they might actually be bad for your health. On the other hand, we have the Harvard study. The Harvard study declared that simply by eating a couple servings of fish every week, or by downing enough fish oil, you could cut your risk of dying from a heart attack by more than 1/3. A stunningly hopeful piece of news. And the same goes when you look at other nutritional additions. Fiber, vitamins, carbs, fats, and so on. It explains all of our fad diets, like the famous Atkins diet. You know, the one with no carbs, that's high in protein and fat. But therein lies the problem. Eat better, get fatter. Something's not working here. You might think that our national fixation on nutrients would lead to measurable improvements in public health. But for that to happen, the underlying nutritional science, as well as policy recommendations, and for that matter, journalism, based on that science, would have to be sound. And unfortunately, this has rarely been the case. Consider what happened after the first US national dietary guidelines came out, or rather dietary goals. These were published in 1977 and were released by a national panel on dietary health. In the wake of these recommendations that we cut down on saturated fat intake, and recommendations seconded by a 1982 study by the National Academy, Americans did indeed change their diets. And for a quarter century, they endeavored to do exactly what they had been told. Well, kind of. The industrial food supply was promptly reformulated to reflect the official advice. And so we had low-fat pork, and low-fat cookies, and low-fat pasta, yet all the high-fructose yet low-fat corn syrup that you could possibly pack into a single serving of food. And that turned out to be quite a lot. Oddly, Americans got really fat on their new low-fat diet. And many people indeed date the current obesity and diabetes epidemic to the late 1970s, when Americans began to binge on carbohydrates, ostensibly as a way to avoid the evils of fat. But is doctored food really what the doctor ordered? Because frankly, this is based on bad science. People don't eat nutrients. People eat food. And so if you look at the chemical composition of any common food plant, you'll realize just how much complexity lurks within it. Let's take garden variety thyme. simple herb growing in your vegetable garden. Want to know what's in it? Here's just the simple version. Ascorbic acid, beta-carotene, caffeic acid, lauric acid, oleanic acid, palmitic acid, rosmarinic acid, selenium, tannin, tryptophan, orsolic acid, and vanillic acid. Yeah, that's what you're ingesting when you eat food flavored with thyme. Some of these chemicals might be broken down by your digestion, but others are going to do undetermined things to your body. They might turn some genes' expressions on or off. Or they might head off a free radical before it breaks off and disturbs a strand of DNA deep in some cell. Now, it would be really great to know how all this works. But in the meantime, we can probably go eating thyme, because we can base our consumption of thyme on centuries of data, we could say. People have been eating it forever, even though they didn't know all of these nutrients buried within it. And I'll spare you the list a second time. And they might actually think it does some good. And in any case, we like the way it tastes. So here's the problem. We can't break food down into its constituent parts. And if all of our science is flawed, then what the heck should we eat? This brings me to an article penned by Michael Pollan, a US food journalist and food writer. It was published in the New York Times Magazine, an excellent publication, in January of 2007. And it had a very simple, yet very striking title: Unhappy Meals. Immediately bringing to mind the happy meals that all of our children, I'm sure, have consumed when you take them to that bastion of American food glory, McDonald's. Now, in his article, Michael Pollan came out with a very pithy 3-line maxim to tell us what we should eat and what we shouldn't. You ready for it? First, eat food. Second, not too much. Third, mostly plants. That's it. In 3 simple lines, that's the answer to what we should be eating. The answer to this supposedly incredibly complicated and confusing question of what we humans should eat in order to maximize our health. Now, these recommendations are based on a quarter century of research. And I won't go into all of the details. If you'd like to follow up on this, I recommend that you check out this article, which is indeed excellent. But the long and the short of it is that from the 1980s on, food began to disappear from the American supermarkets. Food as we knew it, that is. And it was replaced by nutrients. Now let me make this very clear. Food and nutrients are not the same thing. So once we had familiar names, things like apples and bananas and pears, and now we have not so familiar things. All of these brightly colored packages emblazoned with labels like high fiber, low carb, high in omega-3s, that's a new one, and so on. People began to believe that these invisible substances could confer health benefits on the people consuming them. Food, on the other hand, was old-fashioned. Food was coarse. Food was completely unscientific. Why would you want to eat that? I mean, what could you really say that was in that? But nutrients, on the other hand, nutrients were something special. Nutrients were those chemical components and the minerals in food, things that nutritionists had deemed important for health. They were emblazoned with scientific certainty. You eat more of the right nutrients, fewer of the wrong nutrients, and voila, you'll live longer. You'll avoid chronic diseases. The real problem, though, is that typical foods don't really fall under these categories envisioned by nutritionists. So something as simple as a banana or an avocado can't easily change its nutritional stripes. It's just a banana or just an avocado. So you might, depending on the nutritional orthodoxy that was reigning at the time, choose, well, okay, I'll avoid avocado because it's high fat. That's the old way of thinking. Or you might say, oh, but avocados are high in mono unsaturated fats, so we should embrace them. And that's basically what happened. We were riding the tides of this nutritional weather, this nutritional firestorm. Everyone falling prey to whatever we might think was the latest craze. However, there's a big elephant in the room. And that elephant, my friends, is the Western diet. Because most of these ambitious and widely reported studies that were published left most of the Western diet untouched. You know, the Western diet, lots of meat, lots of processed foods, lots of added fats, lots of added sugars, lots of everything, frankly, except the fruits and vegetables, except whole grains, except the stuff we really need. Nutritionists went on fiddling with individual nutrients, falling prey to the newest fad, and they left us all confused. Now, just a brief comment on the Western diet. We need to bear in mind a few statistics. First of all, people in America today suffer much higher rates of cancer, of heart disease, of diabetes and obesity than people who are eating more traditional diets like your Mediterranean diet or the Japanese diet, for example. In fact, 4 of the 10 leading killers in the United States are linked to diet. And we know that people who move to the United States from these countries with low risks of these chronic diseases, all of a sudden start to pick up these so-called diseases of affluence. So it's nutritionism coupled with the Western diet which are really the problem here. And nutritionism, despite a quarter century of research, has shown that rates of cancer and heart disease have declined only slightly in the last 25 years, while rates of obesity and diabetes have soared. I think we'll take a brief break here and then come back in a moment for some recommendations. 9 simple tips laid out by Michael Pollan in order to figure out what we truly should be eating beyond this rage of nutritionism. Thank you.